The sponsor for today's podcast is Repower Daily Electrolytes. Hello, I'm Kieran O'Connor, and this is episode 10 of the Calculated Risks podcast. Today, we are joined by Julian Mensah. He is the founder and CEO of Voltric. They are a UK-based company building the future of electric mobility. They're doing this with flexible, frictionless EV subscription services for individuals and businesses. Hello, Julian.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
No, this is a pleasure. Thank you.
I'll start off with some gifts. Here's a copy of my book, which I give out on every podcast. I'm sure that can sit on the shelf somewhere. Maybe give that to the team.
Definitely.
And also, you're the first guest where we've now got our new sponsor on board. So you've got some daily electrolytes there.
Guest to have this.
Yeah, you're the first one actually. So you'll have to let us know.
Guests know that they're missing out.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, cool.
The previous one anyway.
Yeah. So we start the podcast the same every way, and the title of the podcast is Calculated Risks. So we want to delve a bit deeper into your background. And what most importantly, that first risk you ever took. So can you think back to the biggest risk that you've taken in your professional career?
Yeah.
And how did you feel at the time? And looking back, how do you feel about it now?
Yeah. So jumping straight into it, I think everything since I think the last 8 years feels like has been a risk. I actually even further that actually. Now you're making me think quite hard. When I was doing my, all my life I've grown up with music, right? And I have a background in music. I used to run a creative department in my church of approximately 60 individuals, everything from worship, production, lights. So to try and get into a professional role with that in itself was a risk, and that was quite tough. Then I decided to pivot and get into a professional role. I started working at Nationwide in Swindon. And then because I couldn't, though I had transferable skills, I couldn't grow within the business because my background was in music and production. So then I chose to do a master's. That in itself was a risk, right? Just before I was about to get married and buy a house.
Wow.
Exactly. Then after 2 years, completing my master's, then working professionally in various roles, then I say to my wife, I'm going to start a business. That in itself is another risk. But to answer the question simply, I think now that I reflect on this, certainly the last, I'd say comfortably 10 years, almost every aspect of that has been a calculated risk in terms of, what I wanted to achieve and how it can get me to where I am today, but of course beyond that as well. I hope that answered that.
Absolutely. It's funny when you look back in hindsight that every risk is calculated and it gets you to where you need to be as well.
Absolutely. When I think about it now, the whole point of going to university, above and beyond being from an African family, and you have to go to university. But the whole point of going there was so that I can have a career and be successful. But the calculated risk was I was doing a course on music and production, not in say your finance or your legal or whatever, right? So that in itself was calculated risk. It didn't pan out per se, and in a way, I'm glad it didn't pan out because life has led me to where I am today.
Yeah. And now a message from our sponsor, Repower Daily Electrolytes. Picture this: you're in the middle of a busy day, work deadlines, family chaos, but without realizing it, your brain is running on empty. Just a 1% drop in hydration can tank your focus, reaction time, even your mood. That's why Repower Daily Electrolytes created the ultimate hydration formula. Packed with the right electrolytes your brain craves. Forget plain water. Level up your energy, sharpen your mind, and feel alive again. Stay sharp, stay strong, and hydrate smarter with Repower Daily Electrolytes. And you can use our code PLACE10 to get 10% off your first order. Just touching on the music there then, when you went to university, were you still doing your outside activities in the church?
Yeah. So not in my church that I'm still at now, but I was involved in other activities while I was at university in terms of music. One of my close friends and I, we were able to go to Prague to do a little bit of a tour and performance. We played at Witchwood Festival in Cheltenham. So we were involved in quite a few opportunities, and I think that was the whole point at the time. It's how can we use, I think we were able to learn very quickly how can we use university as a launch pad for potentially a music career, right, or a career in that industry per se. And yeah, after 3 years of trying to make that work, maybe a fourth post that obviously didn't materialize. There were areas within the industry that I wasn't interested in getting involved in. I guess that's what they call the darker side of the industry. And so yeah, I'm glad that the great thing about being involved in music is you can develop a skill in it that you can utilize somewhere else, and it can be more for joy than for money, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that in itself, going back to it, definitely was calculated risk, but it's one that I'm very proud of because I've developed skills that I still use today. I'm not running the team anymore. I stepped down last year just because my family's grown and Voltric is growing. So my other child, I guess. So my capacity has got limited categorically, and but it's something that I love and enjoy, and that's something I kind of do outside of the professional world, which is Voltric or the e-mobility sector.
Well, that was what I was going to ask. Maybe a question for later in the podcast, but I'm curious. Are you still doing your musical stuff outside of Voltric, or is that taking up all your time?
Yeah, so Voltric takes up a lot of my time, and of course my family. I've got 2 wonderful kids, a wife. Parents are getting older, so all of that take up a lot more time. I dabble most in the last 12 months. I dabble in musical activity or worship activity, but I'm not as involved as I was, last year this time, or rather the year before, because of how much effort that required. And in hindsight, right, if you think I'm building a startup from the scratch, building a team, validating, going through building relationships, and still running a team of that capacity, I really did stretch myself. So this is about just giving my body some time to sort of reset and grow, and just being wise as well as you get older.
Yeah, I completely agree. I played football for all of my life, probably 26 years. And when I went into business, I could have carried on playing football, but I also stopped. It was too time consuming. Maybe the love wasn't there. And, like you, growing a startup is complex and demanding, to say the least.
Exactly.
And it's hard to do multiple things and juggle multiple places. So I know how you're feeling.
But the good thing is you have the skill, and I guess you can play on Sundays if you want.
Yeah.
Like that, in your spare time, you can utilize. And I think that's the difference here, is that I don't feel like I've lost anything. It's just I'm not getting paid for it.
Yeah.
Or at least professionally, I'm not relying on this to pay for my mortgage and everything else, which is quite, I guess, in a way, quite nice as well. So yeah.
Good. So the next part to that question is like, how do you feel about taking risks now? This might be quite interesting, right? Because you've grown the startup over the last few years, but now you've got a family, 2 beautiful children and a wife. How do you feel about taking risks? Are you be as honest as possible?
Oh man, I'm probably the wrong person for this. I think I probably take more risk now than I did, because I've been through the cycle, right? I've been through the cycle of raising funds. I'm raising funds now. I've been through the cycle of landing my first customer. We are preparing to launch, or scale up our salary sacrifice proposition as one of the first in the UK to do it on subscription. So like I'm more inclined to take risk now than I was before, because I'm experienced at taking some level of risk, and there's still more of a pie out there for us. So if anything, we're going to double down on risk, right? If you don't invest in yourself, you can't, that's how you get your returns, right? So, but it has come with experience. I'm still nervous each time, but I'm less reserved. Ironically, I've got members of my team who are probably more reserved, but that's the whole point of being the founder and CEO, is that, you take the risk, and if it pans out, hey, happy days. If it doesn't, you don't get to blame your team.
Yeah.
You got to take that on you, right? So yeah, I think I take more risk now than I've ever done, because of the fact that I have taken risk. Some haven't worked out, but some have, and we are benefiting from it.
Yeah, and again, I think that's the hindsight, right? So you can take the risks along the journey. The ones that pay out, pay off tenfold.
Yeah.
The ones that didn't work out, you're still in a great place today, and they've worked out for the better.
Exactly.
So it almost gives you that mindset of, I need to keep taking risks to keep growing.
And I even think of my investors, right? If I had investors that took a risk on us, regardless of the SCIS and tax incentives, but still put money into us. We're not really knowing the future because of the stage we're at, right? So as a result, actually, yeah, once again, they're probably more financially secure, and this probably wasn't a big dent. But I like to think that actually they still took a risk, and the fact that we're still operating, still growing, and we're showing a level of success is testament to the fact that yeah, actually you take some risk, there is some reward, if done right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm excited to come on to the conversation about Voltric, raising investment, the team and stuff. But, going back to when you were in university, talk to me about that gap between finishing university and starting Voltric. I know it was product related, marketing.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I finished university, undergrad, University of Gloucestershire, and then I went to London to try and more or less make that music career work, right? So I didn't have to be an artist or whatever, I didn't have to be a musician, but I have engineering skills, for example. Um, I have, industry products knowledge. So I was trying to find my way in that circle. And some opportunities came, and I always remember telling people, you do a project, you get paid, 5-6 grand, which is great, and especially at that time as well, it's great. But that's 5-6 grand onto your next project, which was hard to always find, right? So it just wasn't sustainable. I moved back home, and to enable my brother to go to university while I was obviously at home with my family, my mum and co. I was getting married, like I said. We were about to buy a house, and then actually prior to that, I started working at Nationwide. So Nationwide ran a scheme called Recommend a Friend, and I worked in the back end of that project where I was looking at why people would recommend a friend but not get their £100, blah blah blah. When I took the project over, there was sort of 2-3 stakeholders. By the time I left, I was reporting to at least 11 stakeholders within the business, and I felt that was a point where I could demonstrate I have transferable skills that I can grow within the business. But almost every department I applied to work in, they may have loved me or loved the work I'd done, but they didn't love my background. So it was at that point, going back to calculated risk, I was like, I'm going to do a master's. And what was really scary about that is I actually knew a friend that did a master's and didn't pass. So I was like, sugar, what if I don't pass, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm glad to say that I did pass. Well, good. But yeah, from there, went to do a master's, finished that. Then I got my first job, and it was an automotive job for a company in Swindon, where I managed sort of components within an engine. So drive shaft, CV joints, and some cooling products, right? Water pumps. And then swiftly after that, I went to do a bit of communications, even though that's not my area of interest or expertise. But then I left to go to another company, which was an hour away. And this does tie into the formation of Voltric. But I just bought a car just for this job because it was an hour away. It was more in furniture. So I was a product manager for furniture. I mean, did you know that one table can have like 20, 30 SKUs? It was just the craziest thing. But yeah, so while I was there, there's a lot I learned while I was on that job. But unfortunately, after committing to a car for that job for the next 5 years, thinking I had a long-term future, within 7 months they said we're going to be made redundant, which was obviously the shock. And it meant that I had to think on my feet as to what I wanted to do. Fortunately, I had written about Voltric in my master's, and University of West England, Bristol had kept it secure for me, which meant that I was able to revisit it and look at my options. But yeah, naturally, that was the point. I was like, okay, I think I might. This is before I even knew I was going to call it Voltric then. I don't know if this is. I don't think it's a secret. I can say this. I actually didn't like the name Voltric.
Really?
I had a different name altogether. But as hopefully people that know me and within the company know me, I always try to test stuff where possible, right? So I did do a bit of market research. I had like 10 names, and I sent it to like family and friends. I'm like, which ones are your favorite? Voltric kept coming up. I'm like, but what about this one? Which I'm not going to say now because it doesn't sound like a household like Voltric does. But yeah, people kept picking Voltric, and in the end, I was like, all right, cool. The people have spoken. We'll
Reluctantly.
yeah, reluctantly.
Yeah.
And it happens a lot. I've got people in my team who make decisions or want me to do certain things that I don't want to do. And I'm like, fine, I'll do it. But I don't like doing this.
Yeah. I'm doing it because I trust you.
Yes, it's very much is that. And they've all falls on me. So bear that in mind. But yeah, like that's how, off the back of that's how Voltric was formed. Or at least the formation of it. But of course, where it was then to where it is now, it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, definitely. Something you mentioned at the beginning there was when you were doing well in the product role on the recommend a friend scheme.
Yes, so that actually wasn't a product role. That was a customer service role.
Okay, customer service role.
So the product stuff didn't come till after I left Nationwide to go work, to go do my master's.
Got you. So what did you mean exactly when you said that people weren't impressed with your background, right? Because it was university.
Yeah. So essentially, I'd finished uni. I'd done some stuff in music, but I'd gone to work at Nationwide, and I took the quickest job I could find. I'll be honest with you, it's a bit of a weird thing with Nationwide. You go in there to think that you're going to be there for 2-3 months. You end up being there for. Some are still there now. But in my case, yeah, I thought I was going to be there for a couple of months, if that. And I was looking at other jobs. I ended up spending almost a year there. But while I was there, I took the opportunity to try and, expand my capacity, which was where I took on this project. I wasn't going to pay for it, but I knew that, by taking it on and sort of developing my skills and engaging with other stakeholders within the business. And that was what was important. I wanted to build relationship with people within the business who weren't in customer service and operations, because as sometimes who you know does really help. And I can testament to that. I can test to that, sorry. So yeah, I built relationships, and some of my interviews that I had were with some of those stakeholders, or at least they had recommended me to other departments that I wanted to go into. So they had credibility with it as well.
Yeah, that's so important. So important. So do you think that, because lots of people who are younger, let's say probably younger than me, like early 20s, there's a definite change in narrative from going to university these days. Some people are, more against it, I would say. Some people don't see it as a good path then. So do you think your university degree, by the sounds of it, do you think your university degree really helped get to you or help you over the next few years when you qualified?
It didn't help me in terms of help me get where I am directly here, but I come back to, there were transferable skills, right? The things that I learned about, I even had a project about running a record label. I remember this very well. I look at what I'm doing now and I'm like, there are some serious transfer. And funny enough, I wish I knew what I know now for that project, because I would have got like an A with that one, or I would have passed that one. I didn't pass it quite well. But there were transferable skills, researching the market, researching, you had to research who was the I think they were like journalists we could research who would post about your music, for example. This is back when we used to call it Twitter. And then, how to find this A&R, for example. It's no different to what we do now. Who within the business do we need to find to make a decision about? There were transferable skills. And I think I actually gave a similar talk last Tuesday. I think, sometimes it felt like up until that point, I had to stay within this world. And the reality is, I think once I had the light bulb moment of, I can do other stuff, I have these skills, that definitely, changes. So I don't regret doing the degree. And don't get me wrong, I went to do a master's after that. And all that did was enable me further with the skills that I had learned to then be where I am today, right? So I definitely have no regrets, despite the fact that I didn't go into the industry. But I'm like, to anyone that I'd be talking to, I'd be very much saying, look, understand what you've learned, and this applies in any capacity. What are the useful skills you've learned, and where else do they apply?
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually, the transferable skills.
Absolutely.
And the core ones can be used across any industry: sales, communication, listening, persuasion, the ability to sell. If you hone in on those, you can go into any industry.
You can go anywhere.
Within reason.
You can go anywhere. You can't become a surgeon, but you can go anywhere.
Yeah, definitely not. Okay, cool. So when on that journey did you have the idea, or the real motivation to start Voltric?
Yeah, so the idea for Voltric came whilst I was in my master's, but of course I went to work for at least 2.5 years. But it was just, at the time, there were literally a handful of EVs in the market. And I remember the assignment, it was called Marketing Analytics. I did some analysis on what was available in the market. And I think at the time there were 5, maybe 6 practical EVs. Obviously that's very different. Even for Voltric, we have like 20, 30 different models available now. Yeah, approximately that. But back then, it was just a handful, and a lot of what I was demonstrating with my analysis was that, of course, there needs to be more options, but these were the ones that could really practically allow you to make that transition, above and beyond your 125 miles on a single charge. Once again, we are well past those days now, right? So that's when that was very much when that started. But I didn't really formalize Voltric for another 2 years, because I was getting some experience. My first job that I was in, I really, that was an interesting job. I thank the good Lord I'm not there anymore. When I was a product manager, my first product role, but I learned so much from my boss, a crazy boss, an absolute nutter, but brilliant. And I got to learn a lot from him. And I come back to take what you can, as opposed to let the experience you have kind of put you down. And I did. I took some of the things he taught me, and it's enabled me, and I still use some of the skills that he taught me then now with what I'm doing with Voltric as well. So yeah, it wasn't for another 2 years, and then I registered Voltric on Company's House, and that was a moment I took a deep breath. It's like, okay, I'm doing this now. I don't think I told my wife that day. I think I told her maybe a week or 2 later.
Really? So were you still employed at that time when you registered?
Yes, I was still employed. Yeah. I mean, but at this point, going back to what I said earlier, they'd already told us we're being made redundant. I think I can say this now. I think for the last 2 months of my redundancy, I just went to work just to click buttons, because we knew we were leaving. There was nothing, and as a product manager, you're looking at product life cycle. I'm not going to be here in 2 months, and there's no one clearly taking on my role. I might as well just go on garden leave, but yeah, they were too stingy to put me on garden leave. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's all I did. But it meant, funny enough, while I was in work, with a little screen on the side, I was looking at Voltric. I built the initial website while I was there. I was doing little bits, while I was there. And yeah, it was the first stepping stone. But that first sort of January to March 2019, 2018, because yeah, 2018. No, it was 2019. Yeah, 2019. Yeah, January to March 2019. That very much was my groundwork for Voltric and the stepping stones.
Yeah, definitely. Signing onto Company's House is quite a big thing, right? It doesn't cost
man,
much, but it's like
yeah.
the mindset shift where it's real now.
It's real now, yeah. It's
Government
happening.
government aware of this. This is a trading company now.
People can see this.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
People are going to judge me. That was the thing. It's like if anyone found my name on Company's House, they'd be like, "Oh, look at it! Look what he's doing."
Yeah.
Like it was a surreal moment. And in a weird way, I still kind of get it. Like depending on who I'm engaging with, I'm still like, "Oh, sugar, they're going to see my name." That imposter syndrome. Oof, it's very high.
It's real.
It's very real. So yeah, but that first time I signed in and I got a certificate, I was like, yeah, we're doing this.
Better get to work.
yeah, it really was like that. It was all right, cool, we're doing this. Cool, yeah. And I remember I signed up to Squarespace, built the first version of the website, which was just a holding page. I went back to the university, and this very much ties on to how I got my co-founder Brent as well. I went back to the university. They had like this pro bono clinic where I got to meet people, whether in legal or in finance, just to get a few advice here and there. Like I said, I just utilized my resources to the best of my ability. I even remember I had an interview for another job, and the other part of the story is once I finally got made redundant and I was starting Voltric, I ended up working in a warehouse just so I can cover the bills. My wife had now given birth. Oh no, my wife was pregnant at the time, so she hadn't given birth yet, but she was pregnant, very much late stages. Working in a warehouse, and then I had an interview for a product job the day after, and I think because I'd done the night shift of the warehouse job, I basically went to this interview just not prepared. And I mean, you can tell I peed off the guy. He was not happy. And I went straight from that interview to Bristol to go see the clinic people to give me advice on the business stuff. Mm-hmm. My mind was already in Voltric before. It's like I could have taken another job, and I probably should have for my family's sake, but going back to taking risk, I was like, I'm here now.
Yeah,
like I'm doing this. So
mentally you were there before, but physically.
So I'm like, you can be upset all you want about your crappy 60K product manager job. I'm going for 120K.
Yeah.
So you can't. Yeah. So that was very much the mentality.
Good. Yeah. And it's paid off.
I'm not quite 120K, but yes,
we're getting there.
We've got a long way.
We're getting there. That's a really interesting point, which I think some of the viewers will be interested in, right? Because we've been very fortunate to have some great feedback from people in like the software space and software and data space mostly, who are ambitious and maybe want to start their own business one day. Yeah. And like these conversations really help. So, when you signed up to Company House and it was official, like if anyone else is in that space now where they, they might be close to that. Yeah. What's the next 4 to 6 weeks? Like what do they need to do to get the business moving?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm going to try and answer it as though I'm starting again.
Please do.
With what I know now. If by the grace of God, Voltric I exited quite well, and I had my hiatus, and I was starting again. I think before you'd even register Company's House, just do some validation, right? Whatever you're trying to build, just get some validation. Do you know whether people are going to be interested in paying for it? Forget investment. No. That's way past the 4 to 6 weeks. Just get some validation. I know people are going to want this solution. And especially if you're an engineer that can build stuff already, build it, get it testing, get into people's hands. The minute you get to the point where there's going to be transaction, then Company's House, right?
Yeah, just to touch on that, very good point, right? So typically, say as it is, software engineers don't tend to want to be out selling. Yeah. It could be seen as selling, right? So let's say they've got an idea, they're building a product. How would you suggest for them to get validation? What do they do? How do they do it?
Oh. I don't think that if they don't like something, I don't think they'll like my answer. Yeah. Because that is the game and I say the game. That's a process. I mean, there are various steps. You can find a co-founder that is stronger at being the front man, the selling piece. A lot of founders I've met do that, right? But assuming you don't have those resources, and once again, we are talking about before you register Company's House, you can do that at any point, and it's really going to be a matter of when is it valuable. But for me, you've got a product, you can solve a problem. you can build elements already. You can get people testing it at no cost or zero cost. Fine, go through that process. In my opinion, once you know that this is something that people want and I can generate revenue, registration company's house, get whatever payment solution you need in place. Then shortly after that, the two people I will always recommend: find a lawyer, find a finance person. They need to become your best friends, right? Because if you don't have the knowledge in that space, in that area, and if you're not certainly as savvy, it's a whole world. When I first started Voltric, and I brought on Brent, my co-founder, for the first 6 months, we spent time in London just going to meetings with seed legals and a few, just because we didn't know that side of things. Frankly speaking, nor did we care, but we had to know so that we can build it. So, knowing what I know now, I would still get customers validation, like all of that work we did almost 6 months after we'd done the whole London touring and meeting professionals. And these days, there are lawyers and there are finance people that will take you on at idea stage with the promise of something in the future, right? I mean, they still gotta like what you're doing, right? Because that's the risk they're taking. But I'd say before registration, just get some validation so that you're not wasting your time, and not that the government care about, so you're not wasting bandwidth on company's house website.
Yeah.
But it's just like just get some validation, in my opinion.
Go speak to some potential customers, some prospects. Just speak to people.
Exactly.
Get it in front.
And especially if you're an engineer, it's not even about selling. Just ask people, what is your problem and how can I solve it? And if you can get a narrative, then you build. That's one of the skills I wish I had, right?
Yeah. I think that's a good part of social media these days. LinkedIn makes it so easy to outreach someone. Hey, I'm building this. Can you give me some time to review it?
Exactly.
Easy
exactly.
as that.
And have a, for me, and like we do it now with Voltric, right? We talk to customers and we don't get everything right. But like, what is your problem? What are you facing? We're preparing to launch, or not launch, sorry. We are trying to understand more around the B2B side of things. And things you're asking the potential customers is like, what is the problem we're solving for you, right? Because there has to be a pain point, or else you're just building for the sake of building. And we're not in the world where that cash is free flowing. So
definitely. No. Before we come on to Voltric, then you mentioned something else then about picking two people, a lawyer and a finance person.
Yeah.
I continually am and have picked service-based businesses for me to help out with certain things, whether that be non-exec directors, a finance person, a legal representative. And, most people find it quite, I've noticed because I've asked people, most people find it quite daunting and don't know how to pick the right person. Like, knowing what you know now, what skills or what attributes did you look for in these people, and why did you choose them?
So this is an answer that I'm going to struggle with, because I was blessed enough that one of the people that I was growing up with in my church, basically a sister of mine, we're really, really close. She was becoming a commercial lawyer. So, and I remember this. I keep embarrassing her about the story. I basically said to her, I remember it was Christmas. It was December 28th. We stood by the Christmas tree at church, and I basically said, look, I'm about to start a business, but I don't know what to do. And I honestly, hand to her, I think she was thinking I was going to start some sort of hair business, or like, when it's like, I don't think she really kind of understood. And to be fair, most people didn't. Even my own mother didn't understand what I was trying to do. To be honest, I didn't think I fully understood what I was trying to do. But she still helped me. She helped me get the first contract. She got me started, and then off the back of that, she brought in one of her best friends, who's become like one of my best friends, people that protects me and Voltric quite well. So it's really hard to answer that question, because I know now with what I've built and the journey I've been on, I can walk into law firms and be like, this is X, Y, and Z, and I need this level of resource. But I don't know how you would do at the start, because I didn't have that pressure. I didn't have that part. But when it comes to the finance side, I mentioned I went to UE Bristol, where they had the pro bono clinic. And actually, sorry, that might be where someone would start, right? Look at pro bono service clinics, and there are loads of them around. I went to UE Bristol. I think, not I'm advertising for UE Bristol, but I am an alumni. But I went there and I said, look, I have this business that I'm doing. I don't know how to run my finance. I don't know how to run the finance. I don't know how to do this. Can you help, right? So to answer the question, maybe if you don't have a best friend or two best friends who are lawyers like I do, go to find pro bono clinics, right? Speak to someone. And actually what you find in some of these cases is people there end up going on a journey with you. Our first non-exec director came from that pro bono clinic, right? And they were able to come with us up to a certain point before we had to find someone else. So that might be the answer to your question.
That's a really good answer. Yeah, pro bono clinics, which most people probably wouldn't think of. I think that's
Mm.
good. And you did answer the first part of the question as well. And you referenced it at the beginning, your network, who
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
sometimes.
Mm.
And often people might be looking at the big names, like, how do I get in there?
Yeah,
Look at your immediate network.
absolutely.
What about the gym? What about the sports club I'm in? What
Oh,
about the
goodness me.
church that we're
Yeah,
in? And, you took on someone fairly junior, just going into it, and it worked out really, really well. So
yeah.
I think that's a good bit of advice. Don't look at the big firms. You don't have to at the beginning.
And
See
you
who's
don't
around.
need to. In a way, I slightly made that mistake as well later down the line where, there was this big firm that I basically challenged, right? And they were like, we help starts at the beginning. And I said to them, well, you charge $1,000 an hour. How are you going to help us? We went on a bit of a journey and they did the job, but they just weren't able to because we were small potato to them, right? And which is rightly so. We weren't bringing in the billions that Google and Co were bringing in. So I get that now. So look, yeah, absolutely. Look within your network, look within your resources. We live in a world where there are so many. I don't want to use free because I don't want to devalue it, but so many affordable resources now just to help you get started.
YouTube.
Right?
You
YouTube.
can find
damn it,
about
YouTube.
anything, any topic. YouTube.
Exactly. Although I wouldn't go for YouTube for your legal advice.
Oh no, probably not. Yeah.
But exactly, there's so many resources that can help you get started. All the way down to even building an app now, right? I think it's Bubble that helps.
Lovable.
Lovable.
Yeah, where you can an AI software developer. I've tried it out. It's incredible.
Well,
within 10 seconds, within 30 seconds, I've prompted it and I've got an app, like an actual functioning app. It's incredible.
This is the thing. So once again, if I was doing it all over again before the company house stuff, just get something in someone's hands and just see how they get on with it. At the point you're going to start transacting, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, then you do all the boring governance crap that has to come with it. Yeah. That's my opinion. But yeah, there's so many resources available now that even when I started only 5-6 years ago, weren't available then. No. So I think when it comes to the process, yeah, look at what's available around.
There's a limited resources.
Yeah.
So let's go into Voltric then. So
Yes.
you have a co-founder.
Yes.
At what point did Brent come into the journey?
Yeah. So if I take you back once again to the story of I was in the process of being made redundant. I was in my final month where I was just clicking, but really building Voltric in the background. I don't know what prompted it. Actually, no. So it was when I went to this pro bono clinic. It was during that period. And then I don't know what prompted it, but I found this classroom next to the clinic called Team Entrepreneur. And essentially they teach you how to become an entrepreneur. But it's a BA business course. So I walked into the room and I basically said, go back to transferable skills and having some level of confidence. It's like, I need a co-founder. Can I come and speak to some of the guys here? Because they're actually, you're teaching them how to be entrepreneurs and business. I don't have that. So yeah, I made the arrangement. I came into the classroom and I spoke to a room full of 60 students who were going through their various journey. Three of them became interns. So I interviewed them at U, and it was the promise of become interns. If things work out for the next 6 months, you get to be co-founder, right? It's very straightforward. And then 6 months later, three of them didn't work out, but Brent did. And then he's been on me. He's been with me this entire journey.
And he started as an intern.
Yeah. Wow. And I guess at that point where none of you quite know what you're doing, intern doesn't sound so low level. It's kind of like, yeah, come with me. I'm not going to show you everything, but if it pans out, and look, he's been phenomenal, right? There are many people within Voltric ecosystem that will tell you Brent is a force to reckon with. He takes his time, he gets it, he thinks a lot strategically, probably more risk averse than I am, if I'm being particularly honest. But he's been phenomenal. And not long after having Brent, actually, we've got our not so co-founder for tax reasons, as we keep saying. But Phil Collins is his name. I know, it's brilliant. He's our CTO as well. And yeah, the two of them coupled up together has been really good because it just means that you get, once again, I like having knowledge, and I like having people around me who have different views of things. And I'm not precious about, this is my thing. So it's like, actually, no, we're all going to share this bread. So let's see how we make it work, right? And everyone has their own incentive as to why they're still in Voltric. So yeah, bringing Brent on board was calculated risk. One of the best decisions I've ever made. And I was with him. He lives in Guernsey, even though he studied in Bristol. but I was with him last week in Guernsey. And yeah, no, it was definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made.
What a great story.
It is. It is. It's probably the closest relationship I have next to my marriage at this point.
Nice.
being honest,
I'm
yeah.
sure he'd be happy to hear that. Yeah.
No. Yeah, no, I should talk to him less.
Yeah. I love hearing about the first 6-12 months, about like the key milestones are like first customer. I love hearing about that story, and like first part or first time you thought this is gonna work. Like we're on to something here. So two great parts of
Those
the
are
journey.
two different moments for me.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the first one. Let's start first paying customer. How long was it?
First paying customer. So pandemic finally happened, and we launched like a little type form survey. Would you be interested in getting into an electric vehicle? Right. Forget the subscription element. Yes or no? I spent months building that, and when I discovered that Typeform had a logic system, I went to town with that, like a whole journey. We launched it. A couple of people said they'd be interested in becoming our first customers. It was a really good piece of research that we did there. And then when we said that we were going to start the pilot customers, we didn't even have the cars. I don't think anyone knows this, but we took the first payment, and then I basically went to. I finally formed a relationship with Renault at the time. I was like, all right, cool. I need 2 cars because I got 2 paying customers. Actually, we had 3, but I couldn't afford to get a 3rd car. And fortunately, one bowed out, which is great. But I was like, okay, this is the cash we have. And this wasn't even money from the customers because it was subscription, but just money that we'd raised ourselves. And I said, this is the cash we have. I need these cars. And after various decline, accept, I was like, yes. And that in itself was a brilliant moment. The customer was also really helpful. I mean, our website was so crap. The other customer, who was in tech, had to break into our website, fill in their details, build himself, and then it was such a mess. Oh my life. That was I remember when Brent and I was like, there's so much wrong with this. So much. But they were so keen. I think so at the time they were with a competitor. They needed something very quick, and that's the benefit of subscription. Best case, in a normal situation, we can get a car to you within 2 weeks, right, from signing up. She was like, I needed a car ASAP, but we just couldn't fix the website to get her to do it, and she did it all herself. And that was very scary. So I really enjoyed that. And then, of course, I picked up the car, and I live in Swindon, so I drove from Swindon to Morecambe to pick up the car. Because so I drove with my brother from Swindon in our car to Morecambe to pick up the Renault Zoe. Drove all the way to Norwich, and then at like midnight had to find our way through Northampton down to Swindon. 23rd of December, just the day before Christmas or Christmas Eve.
Talk about commitment.
Bro, this was our first revenue.
Yeah.
I don't think we celebrated enough, but damn, like that was an emotional one.
Yeah, 2 days before Christmas as well.
It was yeah. I think I'm still recovering from that.
Yeah. PTSD.
that was a moment. And what was great is, once again, the customers were so good. They understood it was a pilot. We had formed other partnerships to try and enable the service to be successful. And these customers were able to tell us, yeah, this is not good. Like, this is not interesting for us. It's not interesting. We literally cut ties with partnerships that were not adding value to this, because the customers were telling us, like, we got told that they'll be valuable to the customers. We got told that this would enhance our service. And the customers were like, no, this is not, no, cool. Well, all right, cool. Well, we're paying for this. We don't need to pay for it anymore. Drop it off.
And you're doing that so early into the journey as well, get customer feedback straight away, what's working. Yeah.
Those first 2 customers, man, and it's crazy to think we make, last year we did 1.6 million in revenue. We do approximately 150K recurring. Like, we make that money that we're making in that pilot season without blinking, which is absolutely mental. But we did go through approximately 6-7 months of just making under $1,000 and just understanding, right? And I think we went through something like 4 or 5 different customers with just those 2 cars.
Really?
Yeah. It was like, you couldn't spell hustle big enough. It really was hustle.
Yeah.
But we learned a lot from that. It formed a lot of our process. That obviously evolved and then evolved. But my goodness, that first sort of customer and then the journey with that was man. I don't know how I'm still alive.
You're reminiscing now.
Absolutely. But then you go on to say, when did I think this will work? There was definitely a point where I thought this wouldn't work and we were about to die. And it's crazy. I remember all the dates. That was April 2023, where I thought, we found out the cash is done. But where I thought it really was going to work was last year. Like I don't know. I think we done our first Tesla deal or deal for Teslas into the fleet, and I remember hitting our first 10 grand in a month. Once again, there are days where we do 16 grand, but imagine we did 10 grand in a month.
Mm.
I was like, yeah, this is it. Like we're now on a trajectory, and this partnership enable. I go back to partnerships. This partnership is enabling this. This relationship is enabling this. Fine, cool. This one is doing nothing, so get rid of that. Actually, I'm actually at the point where Brent makes a decision before I even get there. It's like, yeah, it's not adding value because we can do X, Y, and Z. So this is not adding value. Let's get rid of it. But yeah, no, I'd say very much, yeah, December 2023 was where I was like, oh, sugar, we're doing big numbers now. And I even to that answer that question, I feel like that now. When I see our numbers, our revenue, the partnerships, the rooms that we're in, I'm like, right, okay, cool, we are really onto something here, and we're self-sustaining. Cool, yeah,
Yeah,
this
good.
is winning so far.
Yeah, yeah. So April 23, you said, was when you did like a 10K month?
It was December 23. April 23 is when I thought we were going to die.
Oh, you're going to die? Oh, right. What happened there?
So basically, what happened, right? You go through this fundraising cycle, and all these investors are telling you, I want to see your team. You're going to build all this tech, and there is a whole tech element to the business, right? I want to see your team in place, blah blah blah. So we just raised a bit of a bridge, and I hired all the relevant people to be in place. So I was having these conversations. Not long after that, I think, or just before that, we'd had the infamous mini budget, and then not shortly after that, we had the Silicon Valley Bank incident. So money was there, but no one was deploying. And I'm like, I've already spent to get ready because you told me to do so, right? It was just such a mess, and it cost the business, right? Calculated risk. Once again, I took a risk, thinking it was going to pay out. I told all the investors that I was talking to, I've lined up as you should. I should, because this is what startups do, right? It's growth, 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 growth. And I said it to one of my colleagues. That period was the first time I felt the industry, and I'm saying that the investment industry, start to use the language profit, because everyone was growth. Everyone was throwing money at everything. Every conversation I had, how you going to grow? How you going to grow? How you going to grow? It was all growth. For the first time, I could now hear people talking about profit. And I was like, right, okay, cool. So you just change your tone whenever you want, but we have to do all the work. So that's when I really took my time. And like I said, Brent and Phil, there was a deal we were going through. It was a potential acquisition, or rescue acquisition, and then it kind of turned into a hostile, I won't say hostile takeover. Basically, they were going to allow us to die and then buy us, and then put me on like a sort of golden handcuff type deal. I walked away. The guys, Phil and Brent, walked away. I walked away from that meeting thinking I'm done. I'm going home. I'm going to have to tell my investors that, yeah, we didn't make it work. Phil and Brent were like, if we cut tech, think about it. We have this margin. We can do this. It's like, son of a gun, just don't want to keep going. I remember we went to Prime Minister in Bristol, and yeah, we agreed to keep going, but we were going to cut tech, which meant that Phil's role was arguably diminished for a period of time. But he came into the commercial side of the business, the operational side, and just helped grow that. And like I said, yeah, I have a lot of gratitude for the people around me, because they definitely keep me going. And the times they talk about stuff I don't even get anymore. I'm like, damn, like, give me a minute. I'm still reading that email.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
when you say you cut tech, did you have to unfortunately lay any people off?
Yes.
Tough part of the journey, right?
It's something I wish I didn't learn so early on. It's not pleasant. Firing people, letting people go. That was. Yeah, we hadn't hit the level of momentum that I felt we needed to hit for me to start doing that. Maybe I'm wrong, but that was a tough one too. I mean, I even remember I put an investor call in, and thanks to one of my other investors, I kind of knew how to structure the call. But I put an investor call and I said, look, calculated risk once again. This is the opportunity we have, but this is where we're at. We could wind up and close, and everyone goes their way. Or we could try and save the business, but it will require you guys to put some more money in, approximately 90K. And the investors that came onto the call agreed to do that. And that has propelled us once again. But yeah, we definitely had to let people go. We had to think really strategically. We had to think we're going to be really careful with spend. And we still are. It's still very much in the vein of how we operate, because we are self-sustaining now. We hit break even last year. But yeah, it was a very scary time. Definitely, like that year was a year. That was the first year in my entire life where I did not celebrate my birthday, because it all happened around that time. And I was like, I don't feel right to celebrate because I'm either destroying people's livelihood or I'm just messing up basically.
Yeah, the first time is tough, and I can only imagine how bad that felt because I haven't had to do that, and I really hope I don't. And I think it's one of those things. No matter how well you handle the situation, it never gets any easier, right?
No.
Laying people off, destroying lives, or at least taking an opportunity away from people. It's just a tough
It's
situation
a
to be
tough
in.
one, yeah. And even coming to the realization that, and I said this to Brent when I was with him last week, I was like, we are actually responsible for people's mortgages. Just bear that in mind.
Yeah,
That's a very scary thing to accept.
yeah, definitely.
It's a lot less scary, of course, fundraise when we've got more cash lying around and, I can sleep at night comfortably. I do sleep at night. But yeah, where we're self-sustaining each month, we know we can cover our bills, we can pay our overheads, but we're like, each month we're responsible for people's mortgages and their ability to eat. That's a different mentality.
A lot of accountability.
A lot of accountability.
Yeah. So tell me about the services, because you went into a bit of detail before we started. I know the subscription model is the
right.
big thing, but tell me like all the different branches you've got.
Yeah, so as we said, we provide electric vehicles on a subscription basis, predominantly for individuals, and we're doing it through their businesses as well, through their employers. It's essentially where people pay one price a month to access an electric car of their choice. So it's not just the car itself; it's insurance, tax, MOT, breakdown, everything you need to access a road-ready, and we use the phrase road-ready electric vehicle, right? And you pay one price a month. We do offer it we offer it on monthly rolling at the moment. Some vehicles, but at the moment it's become quite rare actually. But some vehicles we were offering on 12 months. But we've definitely going back to customers and going back to feedback. Customers are far more interested in a monthly rolling element just simply because they'll be able to cancel and sort of move on. In partnership with another company, we were one of the first in the country to do a subscription-based salary sacrifice proposition. So not lease. Lease has always been around and it's existed for Lord knows how long. But to do a subscription-based one was slightly different. A lot of lawyer conversations and HMRC and compliance. But yeah, it basically means that for companies that are sort of startups or companies that don't want the liability of this lease asset they're taking on with a subscription, they don't have to worry about that. So if you're a startup or a small SME and you can't access the leases and the lease costs for as a benefit to your employees, we can assist you with that on a subscription because once again it doesn't sit on the balance sheet of the company anymore. So that's one aspect. If a company is concerned about, or rather, if a company wants to be competitive on day one, they can offer a benefit which includes a car via a subscription. And if the employee doesn't last the probation or leaves before then, once again the company doesn't suffer for it. You simply just return the asset, or at least notify us 30 days notice, and then we will pick up the asset.
Yeah. What's the typical time frame or average time frame that someone would take one of these on a
Oh, are you kidding
subscription
me?
base?
My longest customer is 3 years.
On the subscription?
Yeah.
Wow.
And this customer was very. I need to be careful. I hope she's not watching, but she was quite stubborn actually, because I have a perception. I feel like it's on a subscription service, there is value up until about 18 months, right? Where you're in the same car paying the same amount. I like to encourage people, definitely in that 18 months, swap, because you can. It's a monthly rolling swap. Of course, you can swap at any time, but don't go beyond that. This woman stayed in the car for 3 years, right? I'm probably revealing more than I should, but eventually we had to deflate her vehicle, and she's now in a brand new Kia EV3, paying the same price. And for her, the joy of the subscription was whenever the car was due for service, all she had to do was go to the service station, not the service station, the dealer next to her, hand over a key, sit down like you and I do, and they bring her coffee, which we never asked. And at the end, give her a key back, because in the background, they're speaking to us, informing us about the vehicle state, all the different maintenance elements, service elements. We make payment over the phone. So all she has to do is just hand the key and then move on, right? I mean, there has been the odd time they've spoken to her and they were like, no, deal with us. That's what she's paying for. So that's the value of, I think there are different opportunities for people, the different areas where people see value. And for her, it's the fact that she hasn't got to worry about her car.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is great. But yeah, so salary sacrifice is a big area for us at the moment. That's the area where we've had a lot of growth. We work with, I think, 125 plus companies at the moment. Some big names, but the areas that we are very interested in is sort of small to medium size companies that just wouldn't get the lease costs, right? They wouldn't get the least salary sacrifices. We can facilitate that.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm first thing that comes to my mind is price. You know, what's the benefits to someone going for a subscription versus a lease model? Obviously, time frame and flexibility is a big one,
Yeah.
right? But are you able to share the price differences between the?
Yeah, so on a lease, especially if you can afford to pay the 9 months, that whatever the down payment is, it's quite comparative. The different, the way the pricing structure is set up, it's designed that yes, it's on a monthly rolling, so you are paying in terms of the amount, you are paying a lot more, but you are also paying for the monthly rolling element, right? You can cancel in 30 days. Whereas I guess in a lease where you're tied, you put down a deposit and you know you're committed to this asset and this payment structure for say 24 months. When you work it out within a similar time frame, it kind of works out the same, right? Because you've got a large deposit you're putting down, and then you're paying a smaller payment. If you don't have a large deposit, your payment is higher, but you've got flexibility. So it's really down to you as the individual and what you find value in, right? Certainly post-pandemic, once again, a lot of people have identified that they probably don't want to be tied down to assets, where the liabilities. So that's where the value, that's where the comparison comes in. Yes, on a subscription you're paying a high amount, but over a period of time, it potentially could work out cheaper. So, for example, in my case, let's use me as a case study. I signed up for a job and I signed up for a vehicle for 5 years. Got made redundant in 7 months' time. If I was in a subscription, the amount that I paid and certainly the deposit that I put down,
You'd be saving in the back end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how to think about it. Of course, I didn't know I was going to get made redundant. But if you do know certainly that you're in a situation where your mobility needs is fixed for a period of time, a subscription could work. Other people take it as a second vehicle at home. So they've got their petrol car. They're not quite convinced on EVs, but they want to take it because of the cost savings. That has happened. We've heard a lot of that. Some people have taken a subscription whilst they're waiting for their lease to arrive. I know that times have got better, but I mean, not that long ago, we were on a 2-year wait for some vehicles, right? Some have gone to 9 months. So a subscription really is meant to just be a flexible solution just to bridge the gap. What we're trying to do with products, with tech, with some of the innovations that we're bringing into markets to make it more exciting, to make it more smart. We're preparing to launch a mobile application this year that will have information in there. We've got a charge card that allows people to simply tap at a machine and then it turns on the machine and then it knows that this is Kieran's car. He's in a lovely, let's say Porsche Taycan. Yes, start a charge.
You know that's my favorite car. You guess.
I do my research.
Yeah.
But this is the point. The point is that our goal is, look, you want to get from A to B, and there are all these frictions that are in there, whether it's charging, whether it's parking. What if we handle as much of that for you so that you can focus on your journey? Right? That is the whole point. So, yeah, our goal is, look, we've now built a subscription. We operate quite highly in salary sacrifice, and we think that's because of the flexibility that we offer, a lot more businesses that would otherwise miss out, whether through some of the big names, can benefit from it. That's our area of growth. But we're also building tech to enable it to be a smarter subscription service, right? All the way down to the data side. What if after your subscription, you can take that data set that you've developed, right, about your driving history, hopefully good, and you can then use it for something else, insurance, for example, one day. So there's a whole lot of stuff that we're working on the technology front to really enable this to be a really smart service.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this conversation absolutely flew by. We got about 5 more minutes. I want to touch on the future of Voltric. So loads of tech updates coming, loads of tech new features, mobile application, very exciting. Did you mention at the beginning you're going for a raise again?
Yeah. So again,
how's it been? What's the market landscape from your perspective?
So I guess the good news is with our performance, there's a lot of interest. We're having a lot of good conversations, and my target is to close the round approximately by July before everyone goes on holiday. Lord knows I'll need one too. So we're raising 2 million plus. We've already got some soft offers. We're just in the phase where we're trying to land a lead, and with a view that we can get this done and dusted and get back to the sort of growing the business. We've got a few launches that are off the back of this race. So the mobile application. We've got a portal for the business, the employers that we're working with, where they can see data on CO2 savings by enabling the employees to access the salary sacrifice. There are benefits to the company in terms of sort of financial savings as well by working with us. There's a lot that we're excited to bring to market over the next sort of 24 months, especially post the raise. I think I mentioned this at the start, we'll be looking at some B2B propositions or solutions where we'll be looking at how we can virtually manage a fleet for small to medium sized businesses as well. So that's going to be a more B2B solution. But yeah, that's
absolutely loads happening. One of my favorite questions to ask is when you actually get that money in the bank, how do you even begin to start to know where to deploy millions of pounds? What's like the first thing that comes into your head?
The last time we raised and I had some serious cash in your bank, I slept well. Oh my goodness. That was one of the first nights I said, Brent, I don't want to talk to you. I think I said to the team that I was like, I think the money landed around like 1 p.m., 2 p.m. It was a Friday. I said, we're done for today. Nobody needs you. Everybody have the day off. To my future investors, I'm not doing that this time. But what I will say is we already have a plan. We've got a roadmap. We've got a budget in place. So the money's more or less accounted for. It will very much strategically get deployed as we start to utilize the resources that we have available to us and the resources that we need to get. So there's definitely some recruitment that needs to happen to grow the team. Operationally, we need to bring in some sales functions. We've got a few other roles that we know are critical, and we're speaking to some recruiters about that. But the goal is just to get the team, get the funding in, and then start that work. So I can say with a level of confidence, it's not going to be like, money comes in and then boom, a million goes out. Lord knows we will not be doing that.
Nor will you be going on holiday straight away.
No, not quite straight away. I'll probably do some work first and then take my summer holiday. But like we have a much better plan. We're a proper business now, right? We've got CFO in place, got CTO, got investors. I'm building a board. So we have a structure. Whereas the first time we did this, I slept well.
Yeah.
And then immediately after that, then you remember you have to pay your lawyers, and then you're like,
all starts going quickly.
Yeah. I think flies out quick actually. But yeah, this time we're more structured because we know what we need.
Yeah, cool. I think the last question I can ask is thinking back about the whole journey, right? Because lots of the people watching this will be probably earlier on in their journey, I imagine. One thing that you wish you learned when starting out, either first year or two, or maybe pre setting up on Company's House, what can you give back to someone who's a bit younger?
I think if I go with the first one, which is sort of the year two, just understanding cash flow. I didn't quite understand that. Like I thought I did, and I think to a degree I did, but I didn't really understand it till it became critical. How you understand it, I don't know how you understand it without being in it. And I'm sure there are studies that can kind of guide you in preparation, but unless you're in it and you can fully appreciate how cash flow works, I think that's one thing that I definitely wish I understood prior. So if people can research it and be prepared for that. I think prior to starting Voltric, so going back to your other option, what I wish I knew, I guess in a way I kind of wish I knew how much I had within me, right? There's a lot of there's a lack of awareness of your own capabilities and your own strength. Being able to walk into a room and pitch about your company. I didn't realize I had that skill and capability. Being able to look at options and make decisions, right? Sometimes it's so easy to panic or overreact. And I think, what I'm trying to say is just have some self-confidence. Just like you don't know what you don't know, but once you know it, like use the crap out of it, if that makes sense. So yeah, I wish I knew that I was stronger than I thought. And if anything, there were times where I let that get to me, and I think I've potentially missed opportunities when that came. But
I can relate to that one as well.
I think prior to starting Voltric, and maybe you need to go on that journey to discover that. But for me, it was just realizing that there was a lot more in me than I could handle. And if I'd known that, I think I probably would have handled other situations better.
Two very good points, and I'm sure lots of people will relate to those as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed it today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, and I hope everything I've said is useful to the listeners.
It's been a great conversation. Thanks, Julian. That was a really interesting conversation with Julian Mensah, the CEO of Voltric. I'm sure lots of you can take some points away from that about the startup journey, from growing the company from 0 in revenue right up to 1.6 million. We've got a mystery guest coming on the podcast next week, and we can't wait to share that episode with you too. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and please let me know if there's anyone that you would like to see on the podcast.